Hello and welcome to the channel. My name is Annalisa and this is going to be my April reading wrap-up and at the same time my disability readathon wrap-up. So I'm going to tell you about what type of disability each author has as I go through the books. So first we have I Am Made of Death. This is by Kelly Andrew. And this author has written a fair few books, and she is deaf, has been since she was 4. And this book, even though the main character isn't deaf, she does use sign language, and the way that sign language is used in this book is really reflective of the author's own experience because she didn't really have access to good teaching of sign language. She kind of had to cobble things together, and that's how this main character uses sign language. We also have a CDA, Child of Deaf Adults, who knows sign language and is her interpreter and bodyguard, and they have a romance. This is a YA. I heard about this from Reads with Rachel, who I believe referred to this as bubblegum horror, which is a type of horror that juxtaposes pink and femininity and light and fluffy type stuff with horror elements. And I don't know if it's a requirement of the genre, but pretty often these books have something to say about femininity and the horrors that women are subjected to. In this case, our main character was off alone in the desert when she was 4, and something came, and the opposite of an exorcism. An evil thing came to live inside her. And now whoever hears her speak dies. So that's why she uses sign language. We also have her stepdad being really weird about it, and her mom being semi-weird about it. And then there's this secret society type thing that she tries to go to for help because she wants an exorcism. Yeah, there was less of the bubblegum aspects. I felt more of the other, but she is a ballerina, and she is in a world where her personal style is very high femme, but she also is in a kind of world where her stepdad uses her being feminine to manipulate his business partner's children, etc. So there are definitely aspects of that. And I love a bodyguard romance. This one was not my favorite kind of bodyguard romance, but I still enjoyed it. 4 out of 5 stars. Next we have Feed by Shannon McGuire. This is a zombie story. It is less of a zombie story there's kind of been an apocalypse, so it's kind of post-apocalyptic, but there's a lot more vestiges of regular society than you usually see in a post-apocalyptic zombie story. Or you could interpret it as being during the apocalypse. So those regular society stuff hasn't gone all the way away, and it's kind of in a process. Although definitely the zombies have affected how people live, and things are very different. Kind of like the COVID pandemic, except if people took it seriously and actually stayed home and didn't gather in large groups anymore. But also having to get rid of a lot of animals living close to people, so like larger, medium to large dogs had to be put down because they can turn into zombies. Small animals like cats. I don't know if Shannon McGuire is a cat person and that's why she did it this way, but cats cannot be turned but house cats cannot be turned because they're too small. So they get to stay as pets. But yeah, there are a lot of ways that society's been affected, but there is more of society than I would say is in, say, The Last of Us, even though I've only seen excerpts of that, haven't actually watched the whole thing. And so I love a zombie story. I know it doesn't seem like that because this might be the first one I've ever reviewed on this channel, but I used to love zombie video games, and I used to make up zombie stories based on these video games. And so I'm very interested in the genre, but I have a hard time finding zombie books that are what I'm actually looking for, which is people cooperating together there not being very many people left, but those people who are left cooperating together and creating a community that's safe from the zombies. That's my vibe. And it's kind of hard to find zombie books that are actually about that. This came closer than any zombie story I've found elsewhere, though, as it is showing what humanity has done to survive. It's less of a prepper, people who have the most guns survive type situation. So the book centers on two siblings. It's from the perspective almost entirely of one of the siblings, who are news anchors. One of them is like more on the wild side. He goes and pokes zombies with sticks to get stuff to report on, whereas she just tries to get more useful information. And the first scene is them out doing one of his missions, poking zombies with sticks and then having to run away from them. And one thing that I didn't like about this scene specifically was that it's showing us and telling us at the same time over and over and over again that the brother is an idiot, her word, various other ableist influenced language to describe the brother, as well as showing that he, despite not being someone who wants to die, and also knowing that the things he are being knowledgeable enough to know that the things he is doing are going to lead to death, he still doesn't make the choice not to do it. He also endangers his sister a lot in this scene, but for the rest of the book is shown to not be the kind of person who would endanger his sister. He loves her very much and is also logical enough and understands the risks that that's not an action he would take later in the book. And it's not character growth because the change is pretty much immediate. I get that it's a fun sort of lead-in because they're running away from the zombies, but I think that should have been edited in hindsight when the brother was totally changed his character pretty much immediately after that scene. Other than that, though, I really liked it. It is about them coming onto the news reporter team of one of the presidential candidates for an upcoming election before he has been nominated for his party, which is the Republican Party. He is the liberal end of the Republican spectrums. And so a lot of the book is also about how the trust in the normal institutional media has been lost, and so vloggers and bloggers, like our main characters, are a lot more monetized and are a lot more trusted than a lot of other media, and so it's opened up a lot of opportunities for them, including being part of a press corps of a presidential candidate. Also, this book has something in it that I do not usually recommend books with this in it. So if you are concerned about that, scroll down to the content warnings and I will put a pretty detailed description of what happens down there that will be spoilery. But I ultimately thought it was really powerful and really well done. Also, Seanan Maguire is autistic, and the main character of this book has a retinal issue related to the zombie virus where she has to wear pretty dark sunglasses all of the time, especially outside, and I found that really interesting as well. And so I gave this book also 4 out of 5 stars. Then we have Waiting for Fitz, which I also read as an audiobook, and this author has OCD. It's another YA, and whereas Feed was about some young adults, some actual young adults, as in their 20s, not teenagers. Waiting for Fitz is about a teen. I think she's 17 or 18 because she's a senior, I think, who is institutionalized, not really against her will. She agrees to it, but her mom is the one who gives the official permission because she's a minor. And the institution is really, honestly, a really nice institution. There's no abuse that happens in this book, not even like questionable therapies. And it is based on the author's experience of institutionalization. So it's nice to know it's not always horrific. Did I say this was by Spencer Hyde? That's the author's name. It is also a little bit of a romance with Fitz, who has schizophrenia. Do be aware going in that people with schizophrenia have a lot of bias against them. And in this book, there are some accidents that happen that, if read in the wrong context or without knowing that people with schizophrenia are not dangerous and are far more likely to be the victims of assault than to be the perpetrator, might increase stigma against them. So be aware of that. But other than that, I thought it was really well done, and it was really interesting to see that, because I have not read a lot of books by authors who've been institutionalized and then wrote a fiction book related to that experience. It was also fairly entertaining, though sad at a lot of points. Definitely, if you want to know more about OCD, this breaks it down quite a bit. And generally, I think it was well done. 4.5 out of 5 stars. How to Sell Your Blood and Fall in Love by Deanne Bryn, who is an autistic author. And this book has an autistic main character and also a main character with fantasy magic related chronic pain. I really appreciated how the pain was represented as someone who has that, and same with the autism. I also really like the romance. This one, I would say, there was less lying and scheming going on in this one than in the previous one in this series, but I also really enjoyed the angst and the sweetness between the two main characters. This is another gay romance, and we continue being fighting against the evil pharmaceutical company, but we do not take them down quite yet. I'm hoping that will happen in the third book, which I also have. This one is also all about community. The character with the chronic pain is also Filipino American, and he has a whole community of other Filipino Americans in a neighborhood of this city that is also a sanctuary area unofficially for vampires. And I really, really loved how he was taking care of the whole community. He was taking care of his vampires who face threats from this pharmaceutical company, but also just making sure that all of his people in the area have enough food and are taken care of. So that was just really, really sweet and lovely. And I gave that one 4.5 out of 5 stars. Then The 30 Names of Night by Zain Jukhadar. This one is about a trans main character. It is about a Syrian American family. There's 2 perspective characters, and the other one is, it starts out when she's living in Syria. And I believe that our trans boy main character's grandmother was actually a Palestinian refugee, which there are a lot of Palestinian refugees in Syria. And so this is about him being a trans man, and it's a lot about him searching out this drawing of this bird that his mother was interested in saving, but that she was ultimately, I believe, unable to save because the building that the bird was nesting in was demolished. But she was a social activist, and that was one of the things she cared about. And so he's trying to connect with his mom by finding this drawing of this bird that would prove that it existed in this area. This drawing was created, I believe, by the other perspective character many years ago and was lost. The older character is also bi. I don't actually remember if she's bi or a lesbian, but she is in love with another woman before she leaves Syria. It tells her story about chasing the birds as they're migrating and trying to find this bird to draw it. And so there's these connections across time, and it's ultimately really sweet and reflective about queerness across generations. I really liked it. 5 stars. So ultimately, I was pretty happy with that. I read 4 out of 5 of my books were by disabled authors that I read during the month of April, and several of those, and a few were also by queer authors with queer characters. I still have leftovers from my Disability Readathon TBR that I'm going to roll over into May and hopefully get those read before June so that I can focus on probably more disabled lit, but specifically disabled lit with queer characters, and other types of queer books for Pride Month. I'm also planning on releasing extra videos during Pride Month. I'm not sure if it'll just be 2 a week or if it'll be 1 every other day, but I am excited for that. Yeah, we'll see what happens. Thank you so much for watching. I'd love to know how your April went and what you're currently reading. If you'd like to leave an emoji, how about something purple? And I'll see you in the next video. Bye!